It's been suggested to me that the VPS height sensors, the infrared sensors, are the primary way that the drone measures height whenever it is within 10 or 11 meters of the ground. Whereas I say the barometric altimeter is used to control height, not to control, to measure height. It's the flight controller that controls everything, but that is the primary sensor that is used to determine height, and it is set to 0 at its takeoff location, and everything beyond that is measured by changes in barometric pressure as the drone rises or sinks relative to the 0 point that it marked at power up. Yes, the infrared sensors are actively measuring height above the surface below, but they only ever seem to influence the drone's behavior in any way if it comes within, was it half a meter, 2 feet of the sensors below. So if I hold my hand more than 2 feet below it, nothing happens with the drone, because the drone doesn't care about what the VPS sensors are saying, the height sensors, the infrared sensor. It only cares if landing protection is enabled, if it sees something closer than 2 feet. So if I get my hand anywhere closer to 2 feet, that causes the flight controller to raise the height of the drone. So whenever I'm flying around, forward, backwards, and sideways, as long as I'm not touching the throttle, it will hold a constant altitude or level, flight level, whatever you want to call it. It will stay at that plane of height based on what it's measuring by its barometric pressure sensor. It doesn't care about the distance to the ground. Right now, it's what? Call it 5 feet above the ground. I'm like, doesn't matter if the height of the ground changes or the drone goes up or down by its, if I command it to go up, or it doesn't care about the distance to the ground unless it detects something closer than 2 feet. So it was suggested to me to test that. This guy was saying that the barometric altimeter is only good enough to hold the drone within plus or minus 1 meter based on the sensitivity of the barometric pressure sensor. So in Lychee, in the top right corner, there's the little gear wheels there. You can adjust all kinds of settings. If I go to aircraft, down, 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 there is landing protection. I'm going to leave the landing protection enabled and see what happens if I turn the vision positioning system off. Okay, back to this view. So the vision positioning is just the camera, or is that all of the VPS sensor? Is that still active? No, it has turned the sensor off. The optical sensor and the height sensor. So right now, it is determining height only with its barometric sensor. The barometric pressure sensor, which the flight controller interprets into holding height. And yeah, it's doing its usual wanders around plus or minus whatever you have, but it's certainly not plus or minus of 1 meter. And if I, let's say, turn to the left here, if I fly it forward, is it noticeably sinking or raising up all by itself? No, it stays at that height. And because the infrared sensor is deactivated, it can't see that snowbank it just passed over, so none of that affects its height. I'm flying it back towards me now. It is controlling its height. I'm not touching the throttle in any way. It's controlling its height very accurately using the barometric sensor. What changes if I re-enable? I'll go back to settings, aircraft, and scroll down to vision positioning system. It is now active again. The landing protection system is still active as well. Just to show you that the vision positioning system and the landing protection system has been re-enabled. It doesn't care if the height sensors see anything below it. It's holding altitude because of the barometric sensor. If I get my hand within 2 feet, Now the infrared sensor sees my hand and automatically landing protection raises the drone up. It's the flight controller that raises the drone up, but just taking its cue from that infrared sensor. The infrared sensor otherwise never seems to influence the drone's behavior in any way.